So I heard there was a competition for the most boring, all text-based slide presentation, and I'm trying to win that, so hope you guys appreciate my presentation. But no, really, you'll see it is really a text-based presentation. I'm also probably not the most eloquent public speaker you'll ever encounter, but my objective today is to really give you a few pieces of information and specific action items that you can take away from this conference and put to real immediate use. Just by a show of hands, how many people are here today on behalf of a company? So they're part of a team. Essentially, their boss has sent them here as opposed to their individual entrepreneur. Okay, so vast majority of you. And how many of those of you who raise your hands expect to go back to the office and have one of the first questions that's asked of you when you walk into your boss's office to be, okay, what'd you learn at this show, and what can we apply and get immediate ROI on the money I just spent to send you to Santa Monica? Right, all of you. Okay, so my sole objective with this presentation is to give you some ammunition for that exact question. Some very simple, actionable things that you can do immediately, that you can champion within your company to make a real and immediate difference moving forward within your company. Now, to get to that, what those actionable items are, I'm going to first go through a little bit of background about what I've learned in the industry, what I've learned specifically about big data and how it can apply to marketing and the way that you each manage the data within your company. Okay, so to do that, we're going to go through a refresher on the history of data-driven sales and marketing. We're going to talk about how history tends to repeat itself and how smart companies learn from history. And then we're going to try to answer the question, is big data from social media the future, specifically, obviously, of marketing? And is social media the new email as well? And who should get involved in the business of big data? How do we get started on that? Again, that's those key action items that you're definitely going to want to leave here with. A plan for executing, and then really my predictions of what the digital marketing environment's going to look like in 5 years. Okay, so the history of data-driven sales and marketing. Some of you may remember in the 70s and 80s, direct marketing was about working with a list company, a direct mail house, third-party bonded, and if you were lucky, maybe you would get what was called Cheshire labels in a box, and you could mail out to people. And then, of course, there was cold calling, telemarketing. In the late 90s and early part of this century, we started to see email marketing break onto the scene and really become a more efficient means of getting your message out to a large audience. Now, the interesting thing about when email marketing came onto the scene was that even though a lot of companies started doing email marketing, most of them didn't plan very well for the future as far as how they would create a sustained email marketing effort over time. So they actually didn't collect email addresses from most of their even clients, even paying customers. They would oftentimes neglect to collect email addresses for. I know because one of the things our company has done, and I've done with several companies over the last 15 years, is actually help them find the email addresses for those clients that they already had all the other information for. So that was a sort of a big mistake that most companies made, is they failed to collect that information early, and then they ended up playing catch up with the companies that were smart enough to collect that information. Literally around 1999, 2000, 2001, a lot of companies in different industries still were not collecting email addresses of their clients. And now, fast forward, the next step after email marketing in the history is marketing automation, and that's simply more intelligent and coordinated email marketing. Somewhat integrated with social media, which I see as sort of on the horizon as far as marketing is concerned. When I'm talking about digital marketing, I'm talking about marketing that you can essentially automate, mass produce, and scale. Most people are still doing social marketing on a relatively finite basis. In other words, on sort of a one-to-one relationship, high volume of resources to accomplish relatively small level of communication. Okay, so if we look at direct mail, email, marketing automation, we see some patterns how history tends to repeat itself. Early in the process of any new media, marketing is seen as a process, not an asset. So like I said, a lot of people doing email marketing when it first started, they were engaged in email marketing, they were renting lists, they were hiring publishing companies to send out emails to their target audience, but they weren't building an asset in-house. They just saw it as really a process that was ongoing, but not building an asset. I mentioned renting. It's also not seen as a core competency for a lot of businesses. When a new media emerges onto the scene, they'll tend to outsource it a lot of times to a third party, as opposed to building it as a core component within their company. They tend to have a lack of control over the process when initially utilizing a new media for marketing purposes. And the cost per connection tends to be very expensive. If you think about it, when email marketing first broke onto the scene, the cost of getting an email into somebody's inbox was much, much, much more expensive than it is now. And right now, as I mentioned earlier, the cost of engaging somebody through social media is relatively expensive. Unless you're a very early adopter of one of the marketing automation solutions that incorporate social media into it, you're paying a lot for each connection that you make, much higher actually than email still. And as a result, again, valuable data assets are not built in-house and not kept in-house. Okay, in the middle phase of a new channel emerging onto the digital marketing scene, you see smart companies start collecting data. They start building that internal asset. And smart companies invest specifically, not just in the marketing efforts, but in building an asset that will sustain those marketing efforts over long periods of time. And they see it as more than just a process. And the not so smart companies or the lagging companies tend to fall behind at this point in the game. And this is where they start trying to play catch up, and later they have to do things like try to append email addresses to their client database. Late in the game, so once a channel is fully mature like email now is, smart companies are ahead of the game, they're leaders in their industry, and the not so smart companies are either out of business or struggling to keep up. And every time a new media emerges, direct mail, email, social media, the process simply repeats itself. Okay, so how do we learn from this, and how do smart companies in general learn from this? Marketing should be built as an asset, not just a process. It's not just something you spend on and you get an immediate ROI, but something that can build a snowball over time. Collect data early, even if you're not ready to put it to use, and even if you're not sure how it will be put to use. I don't think people in 2001, 2002 foresaw marketing automation the way it exists now, the way you can load in a list of contacts with email addresses and send out automated campaigns that reach out to them strategically and based on actions they take. But they were still collecting the email addresses nonetheless and storing them in their database. Always think about how you'll communicate with your audience in the next generation and as technologies evolve. So what will the audience look like 5-10 years from now as opposed to right now? I mean, I think one thing we could all agree on for certain is that each new generation is more connected to the internet and more mobile than the previous generation. So what will the demographic look like in 5 or 10 years? Because that comes so fast, as opposed to what does it look like right now? And what can we do to be prepared to communicate with that audience? So, is big data from social media the future? And will social media replace email to the extent that email has replaced direct mail? I would say the answer is yes and no, in the sense that I think it will replace email as the most powerful means of communication, but I think it will also be heavily integrated with email at the same time. So I don't think there was not really a way to tie direct mail to email when that sort of shift in power occurred. So email really became predominantly a replacement for direct mail. But I think because they're both digital, you'll see more synergy between email and social media as opposed to a strict replacement. Again, I definitely don't think email marketing will go away. But I think marketing automation will be key, especially tied into email and social media. Okay, so based on what we went through as far as the evolution of each new media outlet and how they will evolve over time and affect previous media channels, I don't think social media as don't think of social media as a process, but as an opportunity to build an asset. Same thing with email. Again, in the early part of the century, people thought email marketing was a process that you engaged in to attract new customers, but they didn't think of it enough as an asset. Now, of course, we all know that your email database is a huge asset, but are we thinking the same way about social media, and should we be? And on that last point, really invest in building your own asset internally. Don't always think of it as an opportunity to outsource something. It should be a core competency for your business. So obviously social media does equal big data. If there is a big data component to social media, you don't have to necessarily utilize enough of social media to where it really is considered big data, but you can certainly pull from the realm of big data that exists within social media the information that you need. Social media profiles are rich in information and is self-reported. So what does that mean? Data in most people's database consists of core fields like phone number, email address, physical address, their job title, where they work, firmographic information on their company. Social media profiles tend to be much, much, much richer. They include things like educational history and job description and other social profiles that person has set up and personal interests. So it's really rich information, and it's self-reported by that individual, which sometimes can have its cons, but mostly it's a pro in that it's very accurate and very detailed. Also, social media really becomes big data when you look at daily posts, tweets, updates, etc. In other words, not just the static profile, but actually the feed from that social profile. So, as I mentioned, make big data as it pertains to marketing and social media part of your core competency within your company. Don't always look to outsource it, because when you outsource, you tend to give away some of the residual value that comes from engaging in these marketing activities. Okay, so here's the part that you want to take back to your boss about what you can do moving forward. If you haven't got it so far, think of social media profiles as email addresses 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So again, the smart companies 15 years ago captured those email addresses to use in the future. Marketing automation did not exist at that point. Now it does. It makes those emails that much more powerful. Email marketing was relatively limited at that point. It was mostly done by third parties, yet the smart companies still captured the information. So right now, don't just ask for email addresses. When somebody fills out a form on your site, downloads a white paper, signs up for a free trial, don't just ask for an email address. Typically, what we recommend is on the first page, ask for an email address, and then when they hit submit, take them to a follow-up page within the form and start asking them for social media information that you can store in your database. Now, do I think the market is fully matured and the tool set is fully matured to the point where you can utilize that information to its maximum potential right now? No, absolutely not. I think but it will be in the coming years. In other words, you'll be able to take something like somebody's LinkedIn profile, Facebook profile, Twitter profile, Google Plus profile, and you'll be able to start communicating with them on a large automated scale through those networks with tools that are just breaking onto the scene and will continue to emerge. I mean, there are tools that are specifically designed for Twitter or specifically designed to communicate with your audience within Facebook. But I believe in the future there'll be tools that operate much like marketing automation does, but they're specifically aimed at social media. And they'll probably evolve essentially from marketing automation tools. But the bottom line is to be on the cutting edge and to get real residual value and grow an asset from your social media marketing efforts, start collecting that information now. What you want is for every client and prospect within your database that you've engaged, you want as many social media touch points as you can possibly archive. Their Facebook profile link, their LinkedIn profile link. And don't just try to get them to connect with you or like you or follow you. Try to actually capture the link to their profile or the ID of their profile, which you can do when they do engage with you on social media. But you can also just directly ask them for it. So somebody may not want to connect with you or your company on LinkedIn, but if you say, oh, please share with us your LinkedIn profile link, and they put that into a form, as you see here, you can see on the initial page, you ask them for their email and password, and then you can ask them for Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and any other social profiles that you think are of value. Not everybody will complete all the form fields, but those that do, that information will be very valuable, not just now, but down the road as well. Okay, so as I think I pretty much covered most of this slide. Collect the information, store it, be prepared to utilize it as best you can now, but really plan to use it in the future. I think if each of you goes back to your company and champions this effort within your company, hey, let's not just collect emails, but let's start collecting social media profiles as well. I think the long-term benefits within your company will be profound, and I think that if you position it correctly, you'll be the champion of that activity. Okay, so 5 years from now, what will the digital marketing look like, and as specifically as it pertains to email, social, and other channels? I really think that companies that start doing this now will be ahead of the game. They'll be able to utilize their internal marketing asset, which is their marketing database, much more effectively. Companies that embrace big data as a core competency of their business, I think will be ahead of the game, as opposed to always trying to outsource that activity. And other companies will be trying to play catch up, just like it literally will be a near carbon copy repeat of what happened with email marketing. And I also feel that data in databases not linked to a social media profile will eventually get to the point where it has almost no value, because it will always be compared with data that is linked to data connected to social media profiles. We at LeadFerret, we specifically build databases connected to social media profiles. We see profound value in that, and already we have a lot of very large companies coming to us specifically to take their existing customer data sets and connect them to social media profiles, because they see this wave coming of communicating on an automated scale with their clients through social media. And I also think that just like now you would not create a form and put it online that doesn't have a field for somebody to input their email, it would almost be laughable if you had a form where you said, oh, put your name and your company name and your title and your phone number, but don't worry about your email. I think 5 years from now, the same thought process or the same laughability would go into having a form where you're not asking for people's social media information. So again, real simple, go back to your employer, go back to your company and say, we need to start doing this immediately. We need to look at every form where we're collecting data and ad fields to collect the social media profile information that matters to us. I think if you do that one thing, this entire show will be worth the money that your company invested in it. So thank you all for listening.